Well, honestly, just because it's recent. But, I put all of these photos together, a lot of them. I have tons of photos from that era. But I did put it together in a, coherent story called The Drag Explosion. And I have this website, but really my live presentations are more the way I want to present things. And I do manage to craft a story. I mean, that's real. I wasn't like, making an artificial narrative. But, I was lucky. My drag career coincided with this, bubbling of drag in the East Village, and then it conquered the nightlife, and then became this media and pop sensation, the drag explosion. And then it faded eventually, like it probably peaked in '95, and then everything went on hiatus, or at least drag's popularity did until way down the road. But I think I'm really proud of that drag explosion and being able to, and it's celebratory. It's not, it's remembering, the greatest drag generation. Because I really feel like, we really did break down a lot of doors. And that's not what we were trying to do. We were just having fun in many ways. But we really were on the forefront and managed to create a, very interesting subculture. Well, I would say '95 it peaked. And one of the reasons was, first of all, there was a big cover story in New York Magazine, which was a very, I would say, even much more dominant magazine in New York at that point. And the cover story was drag. It was actually written by Charles Bush, the actor, who's had success as a drag queen and as a playwright and an author. And I was one of the people that appeared on the cover, and it was a fold-out cover, for God's sake, so there were like about 10 of us. So it was a big deal. And Charles Bush was very laudatory about the scene and stuff, but you kind of knew sort of, I think, when something's declared that it's, you know what I mean, the drag capital of the world, and when it's on the cover of a magazine, then that's more conventional. I mean, yes, you know what I mean, that can parlay into much more stuff, but it also means that it's not quite as cutting edge or underground, too. And as a matter of fact, some big projects then, made their way to the mainstream, like Tu Wong Fu and some other stuff that was big and drag, but they kind of like had already been some years in the motion, so they were out of the way. And then the pop industry was onto something else. Also, there was a really severe crackdown on the nightlife starting around then, too, with the Giuliani administration, because he was completely into quality of life. And so that killed the club scene, or at least it really shrunk it. So a lot of jobs disappeared, and a lot of like the excitement of drag. So all of a sudden, I don't want to say there was an exact date or even an exact year when like the drag explosion began to deflate, but I would say that once you reach a peak, you got to go down. So I'm just pointing that maybe if you really did research, it was '96. But it was around then, so and as I mentioned, there was that big article in '95 too. Sardonic, driven, and an enigma. Very hard person to figure out, and I think when Nelson died, especially, there was a lot of mystery around his death. But I just don't feel like he was friends with a lot of people. But as far as I knew, I think he was very a loner in many ways, even in the nightlife. So I think that there was still an element of who was Nelson, actually. But certainly someone to be admired for his creative output. He was a bit obnoxious, too. That's a fourth word. But but I like Nelson. He was funny. So, and it was kind of obnoxious times too. That whole club kid scene and running into a club and screaming and yelling with a lunchbox. So he fit the moment. I used to live actually on 14th Street between 8th and 9th, very close to 9th. And at that time, it seemed like the edge of the world. But I lived there, I think, 84 to 87, something like that. And so then, and then Nelson lived beyond that, beyond the edge of the world, in the meatpacking district, which was, only, there might have been one bar. There were some underground gay bars, I think, but they had kind of like closed because of the AIDS crisis. But it was so interesting. Who lives in a house in Manhattan? You know what I mean? Unless you're on the Upper East Side or something. So it was kind of ramshackle, but there were plenty of rooms, and I didn't see all of them. But it was just super duper interesting to have this location. And I was more familiar with visiting via Nelson's roommates, who I think at the time were Bunny and RuPaul, Lahoma, Larry T. So it was just this kind of fun clubhouse also. But I would say the most interesting part of all was like this, no man's land location. And the fact that it was a house. You could even park your car out in front, really easily, because it was really deserted. And there was street walking. There was a lot of transsexual street walking, but if I'm remembering correctly, they were a little more further west. I think that, his work really does speak for himself, because he does capture himself so well. He's such an integral part of his own films, and that's really, I never saw any different side of Nelson than what he presents himself. In a way, his videos are very sincere in that he really was that personality. I think sometimes it's a teensy affected, but he really was, I think, very much the person. The public persona was the private person too, I think. I probably knew who he was before I met him, but because he was really, part of that Lahoma, Bunny, RuPaul, Larry T scene, I was inevitable that we would travel in the same circles because I was friendly with those guys. And so we all hung out together. But I don't remember the exact meeting, and I do feel like I knew who Nelson was before, because he was a bit of a celebrity too. Like his name would appear on invites and stuff too, club invites. So I cannot say that I was like best friends with Nelson or anything. We were certainly friendly, but he was, I'm just rambling now, I can't remember what I was going to say. But he was a minor celebrity, so of course I would be aware of him. Well, Bunny and I are still friends. I haven't seen Rue in years. If we saw each other, it'd certainly be friendly, but I haven't seen her in years, and I have, because she lives in LA mostly too. I still see Lahoma, John. He doesn't do drag anymore. Let's see. Larry lives in London. Who else? Keir, I see on the scene occasionally. Lady Miss Keir. Michael Musto, I'm friendly with. He and Nelson were really good friends. Albert Trudeau, I saw recently. Some of those club kids, James St. James, I've seen in California. I'm trying to think who else is in those that figure prominently. A lot of the people I'm still aware, Ernie Glam, I saw just recently. I guess Bunny is the one I keep in touch with the most, for sure.